Hello fellow lovers of the liminal and the weird, and welcome to another video by Liminal Spaces. Today we're going to continue talking about the Elric saga, and we are on to the fourth book called The Vanishing Tower, of course by Michael Moorcock. I do not have a dog copy of this, which makes me very sad because the dog copy is very cool, although I like the cover on this one as well. Of course, I'm reading all 6 books, the original 6 books in the Elric saga with Tim from Secret Fire Books and with Jimmy from News from the Gelding. We're reading 1 book a month, and then in December, when we've read all 6, we're going to do a live stream and chat about all 6 of those books. So if you are into Elric, read along with us and join us for that in December. Okay, The Vanishing Tower. This is the first book in the saga that I feels like each story is important to the one before and after it. I feel like at this point in the saga, Michael Moorcock is really starting to consider what these novels will look like as one read. Of course, even up to this one, these are all fix-up novels so far. I don't know about the last 2. And this is a fix-up novel as well. There's 3 stories in this, but for me, this is the first time that it feels like each one of these stories is a narrative step from the next one. Whereas in the past, all the stories sometimes connect, but are often completely readable and comprehensible on their own. And each of these stories does have a full plot, but I feel like we're to the point now that there would be too much lost if you just tried to read one of these stories without having read all the stuff that came before it. So it's a huge step in the saga, I think, because we're getting into longer chunks of storytelling that happen chronologically, and I think that's important. This novel, I would even say that I wouldn't start with this novel. I think a lot of the other Elric books you could start with the first 3 Elric books. I feel like you could start with any of them and still have a really good time. This one, I feel like you really have to read The Weird of the White Wolf before this one, because there's 2 things introduced in that book that are incredibly important to the overall plot of this book. Mainly Michella in her castle of Canaloon, and also the introduction of Thaleb Karna. Sorry, I have to look down on my notes for these fantasy names. And this book is really, truly, the entire plot of this book is a pursuit of vengeance against Thaleb Karna, who is a sorcerer. And we get the story of why Elric is seeking vengeance against this sorcerer in The Weird of the White Wolf, the last story of The Weird of the White Wolf. So in a weird way, you could add the last story from The Weird of the White Wolf to the beginning of this book, and you could add the prologue of The Weird of the White Wolf to the beginning of this book, and you would have a really complete novel. So this deals with 3 stories, like I said. So each of the trials that Elric goes through in these 3 stories, chasing the sorcerer. In the first story, Elric and his companion Moonglum are trying to track down this wizard. Really interesting dynamic between these 2 characters. I absolutely love it because Moonglum is almost an opposite of Elric. Elric is this brooding, angry, vengeful hero, very powerful. And Moonglum is an incredible fighter, but he also is laid back, loves to enjoy himself, loves to get money and enjoy the things that you can get from having money. So in a strange way, these guys are perfect for each other as traveling companions, because Moonglum takes care of all the finances, and Elric in this story just keeps on giving these jewels away that they got in the last book. And every time they do, Moonglum is like, oh, there goes another huge chunk of money that's worth way more than what we're receiving from these people. The relationship between these 2 is really, really fun to watch. It really is. Anyway, as they're traveling, Thaleb Karna knows that they are trying to find him, so he decides to attack first. and he sends these really interesting chimeras after them. Chimera, however you say that. Very well described in this book. And they end up way up in this frozen country, and they get involved with this attack that Theleb is working with another group of people. I've forgotten who they were. This attack on Castle Canaloon. And Michelle, we know her from the prologue of the book before this, The Weird of the White Wolf, has been put into a sleeping spell by Theleb, which is interesting because that's the same thing that happened to his cousin, whom he really loved as well. So she has this sleeping spell, but she finds a way to get Elric to help her in the defense of her castle while she's sleeping. And Elric is quite taken with Michelle. So there's a synopsis of the first story. The second story is about a city called Nadsakar. I hope I'm saying that right. I'm going to stop saying that. Fantasy names, am I right? This is a city of beggars and thieves. And this was such an interesting idea because this city protects itself. There's no towers. There's nobody on watch or anything. This city defends itself by weaponizing its poverty, which I found so interesting. And it goes a lot into the story, into this idea. Elric gets involved to it because Theleb runs to this city. So Elric is following him there. But the reason that he goes is because two thief women from this city steal Elric's ring that shows that he's the Emperor of Melnibone. So he's going back to get his ring. And the city smells bad, and people live in levels of poverty that almost stop people that have better circumstances in their tracks. I think this was the story that was probably the most fun for me. It ends with a labyrinth and Elric fighting a minor fire god. It's really, really fun. Really fun. The third story is another story where a lot of the Eternal Champions come together. And they have to go into this Vanishing Tower. And this Vanishing Tower is a very cool idea. The tower only exists for a few moments on each plane of existence. It jumps all over to all these different planes, and the only way they can attack it is by heroes from many different planes. So Elric and other champions are brought together in order to fight the whoever is controlling this Vanishing Tower. There's Bartleby. I'm sure you can hear him purring. When he gets purring really loud, he sounds more like a mourning dove or scratching my shirt. or a pigeon. He starts to coo. All right, you got to get down if you're going to scratch. There you go, buddy. There. Yeah, he just wanted to scratch his ear. So there's the synopsis of the three stories in this book. I'm going to basically say the exact same thing as Tim from here on out, but I think it's what I think a lot of people take from this, and that is that the storytelling has changed slightly here, in that a lot of the disjointed, hallucinatory writing of the first three books has taken a back seat and is now being replaced by more sword and sorcery fantasy storytelling, which the pro of that is that the entire book's plot seems to move in a very strong narrative arc throughout. The con of that is there are, in my opinion, fewer moments in this book of mind-bending, what the hell, this is incredible stuff going on. It's strange because I was highly entertained by this book. I was a little sad that it didn't have the high highs of some of the ones in the first three books. But this is, I mean, when you think about it, this is 6 books. This is a pretty thick book when you put all 6 of them together. And if you consider this like an album, there's going to be deep tracks that aren't like instant radio hits that you play on the radio all the time. This is an Elric deep track. This is needed for building up to what I believe is going to be an incredible experience, my reading of Stormbringer. And that's just what I'm guessing from how people talk about the end of Stormbringer, which has not been spoiled for me, so please don't spoil it. Speaking of spoiling, I am going to, for the rest of this video, do some plot spoilers on this one as I talk about the rest of this. The first story, I was kind of confused as I was reading it because I was first experiencing that kind of more succinct sword and sorcery style that Michael Moorcock was using in this particular book. And I was like, wow, a lot of the weird has gone, but that's not 100% true. We're not going to get the 4 eternal champions fighting sorcerers that are towers and puddles of consciousness, and they all form together like a great Hindu god. We're not getting that. And I do miss that. But we do, at the end of this first story, get the concept of the noose of flesh, which is super effed up. This is some weird shit, this noose of flesh. So the ideas are still there. They're just not being cranked up to 11 like they have been in other books. The second story is a riot. I love his battle with this lesser fire god. Really, really incredible. For me, my biggest complaint about this book was the third story. And that is because I'm not a huge fan. That's not a right way to say it. I don't get as excited about Easter eggs as I feel like some people do. Easter eggs, like the fact that whatever his name was, I don't know, that Corum, I think is his name, Corman and Ericose, I hope I'm saying that right. The fact that they're in this story isn't that exciting to me, and there could be 2 reasons for that. The first one is I haven't read these other Michael Moorcock books, so I don't get the excitement of these other 2 Eternal Champions showing up. The second part is crossovers just don't do it for me as much personally. That's just me. They just don't do it for me as much personally. And the second part of the reason that I wasn't a huge fan of that third story is that I feel like it is basically just a retelling of the amazing time this occurred at the beginning of the Sailor of Seas of Fate. That one, the story to me was not about the crossover. It was not about the fact that there were 3 other Eternal Champions with Elric in that story. That story was the mind-bending story of those 2 towers that were each sorcerers with the, pools and all that. As I said earlier, that story is one of the best Michael Moorcock pieces of writing I've ever read. It's right up there with the end of the final program for me. This one, instead of them merging together into this giant 4-faced, four-armed being, they link arms and they laugh and march through. And I'm thinking of the beginning of the Monkeys cartoon where they're all doing that silly walk at the beginning. For me, this third story just got silly. It just got to be look at these guys are here. The bad guy that they face really is nowhere near the weird 2 sorcerer towers. It seems like a silly. It almost seems like. To me, it seemed like almost a slapstick remake of that earlier Sailor on the Seas of Fate story, and this one just did not have it. This is the only part of the Elric saga that I have read that I was like, I didn't need that. This whole story could be taken out, and I think that I would be just fine. And I really want to emphasize the fact that I've read 4 books, and the last 50 pages of this one that is this third story are the only time that I've thought, I could deal without that in this entire saga. What that means is this saga is killer, and it rarely hits a sour note. Rarely. And that is incredible. Michael Moorcock hits it out of the park with these Elric books. I can't wait to continue my journey all the way through to Stormbringer. So yeah, this is, I guess, so far, probably my least favorite book in the saga. But again, this is kind of a deep track. This is an album track. This isn't the track that is the big hit. And I think sagas need those, right? It's a transition piece. It builds up. It builds up to what I've heard is an incredible ending to this saga. All right, that's all I'm going to say about that. I hope you guys are having a good week, and I will see you on the next one.